Sarah Mitchell had been working at St. Mary's General Hospital for 8 years. She loved her job as a pediatric nurse more than anything else in the world. Every morning, she would wake up excited to go to work, knowing she could make a difference in children's lives. Her colleagues respected her, parents trusted her with their precious babies, and the doctors often praised her quick thinking and gentle care. But Sarah never imagined that one rainy Tuesday evening would change her entire life forever. The emergency room was busier than usual that night. Rain was pouring down outside, and accidents were happening all over the city. Ambulances kept arriving one after another, bringing injured people who needed immediate help. Sarah was working overtime, helping wherever she could, even though her shift had officially ended 2 hours ago. Around 11:30 at night, the automatic doors of the emergency room burst open. A man in his 50s rushed in, carrying a small girl who looked to be about 7 years old. The child was unconscious, her face pale as snow, and her breathing was very shallow. Blood was trickling from a cut on her forehead. "Please help my daughter," the man shouted desperately. "She fell down the stairs at home. She hit her head really hard and won't wake up." Sarah immediately ran toward them. She could see that the little girl was in serious trouble. Her training kicked in instantly. Without thinking twice, she took the child from the man's arms and rushed toward the nearest examination room. "Sir, I need you to fill out these forms," called out Janet Morrison, the head administrator who was working the night shift. Janet was known throughout the hospital for being extremely strict about following rules and procedures. She never allowed anyone to bend the regulations, not even for emergencies. "But my daughter needs help right now," the father pleaded. "I'm sorry, but we need insurance information and identification before we can treat any patient," Janet replied coldly. "Hospital policy is very clear about this." Sarah heard this conversation as she was examining the little girl. The child's pulse was weak, and her pupils were not responding normally to light. Sarah knew from her experience that these were signs of a serious head injury. Every minute that passed without proper treatment could mean the difference between life and death. "Janet, this child needs immediate medical attention," Sarah called out firmly. "We can deal with the paperwork later." "Nurse Mitchell, you know the rules," Janet snapped back. "No treatment without proper documentation and insurance verification. The father needs to prove he can pay for the medical services." Sarah looked down at the unconscious girl in her arms. The child's breathing was getting weaker. Her skin was getting colder. Sarah had seen enough medical emergencies to know that this little girl could die if they waited any longer. The father was frantically searching through his wallet, trying to find his insurance card. His hands were shaking so badly that he kept dropping papers on the floor. "I know I have it somewhere," he kept repeating. "Please, just help her. I'll pay whatever it costs." "Sir, without proper documentation, we cannot proceed," Janet insisted. "Please take a seat and get your paperwork in order." Sarah felt her heart breaking. She looked at Janet, then at the desperate father, and then at the dying child in her arms. In that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. "I'm taking her to the trauma room," Sarah announced loudly. "This child is dying, and I won't let hospital bureaucracy kill her." "Nurse Mitchell, if you take another step, you'll be violating hospital policy," Janet warned. "I'll have to report this to the board of directors." Sarah didn't care about threats or consequences. She had become a nurse to save lives, not to watch children die because of paperwork. She carried the little girl quickly to Trauma Room 3 and immediately began emergency procedures. She checked the child's vital signs, started in 4-line to get fluids into her system, and called for Dr. Peterson, who was the best neurologist in the hospital. Within minutes, a full medical team was working to save the little girl's life. Dr. Peterson examined the child carefully. "Good call, Sarah," he said quietly. "This girl has a serious brain hemorrhage. If we had waited even 10 more minutes, we might have lost her. You saved her life by acting quickly." The medical team worked for 3 hours straight. They performed an emergency surgery to stop the bleeding in the child's brain. Sarah stayed by the girl's side throughout the entire procedure, monitoring her condition and making sure everything went smoothly. Finally, around 3 in the morning, the little girl opened her eyes. She looked around confused but alive. Her father, who had been waiting anxiously in the hallway, burst into tears of relief when Dr. Peterson told him that his daughter was going to be perfectly fine. "Thank you so much," the father said to Sarah, holding her hands tightly. "You saved my little Emma's life. I'll never forget what you did for us." Sarah smiled tiredly. She felt exhausted but happy. Another child was safe, and that was all that mattered to her. She thought the worst was over, but she was completely wrong. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work feeling good about what had happened. She expected to receive praise for her quick thinking and life-saving actions. Instead, she found a formal letter waiting on her desk. It was from the hospital's board of directors. The letter informed her that she was being suspended immediately for violating hospital policies and procedures. Janet Morrison had filed a formal complaint against her, stating that Sarah had endangered the hospital by providing treatment to a patient without proper insurance verification and documentation. Sarah couldn't believe what she was reading. She had saved a child's life, and now she was being punished for it. She immediately went to see Mr. Harold Williams, the hospital director, hoping he would understand her situation and reverse the decision. "Mr. Williams, surely you can see that I had no choice," Sarah explained. "That little girl was dying. If I had waited for the paperwork, she would be dead right now." Mr. Williams looked uncomfortable, but his response was firm. "Sarah, I understand your motivation, but we have rules for good reasons. Insurance verification protects the hospital from financial losses. If we allow nurses to ignore procedures whenever they think it's necessary, we could face serious legal and financial consequences." "But what about our responsibility to save lives?" Sarah asked desperately. "Our first responsibility is to the hospital's financial stability," Mr. Williams replied. "Without proper financial management, we can't help anyone." "I'm sorry, but the suspension stands. You'll have a formal hearing next week where the board will decide whether to terminate your employment permanently." Sarah left Mr. Williams' office feeling devastated. She couldn't understand how saving a child's life could be considered wrong. She had always believed that hospitals existed to help people, not to make money from their suffering. The news of Sarah's suspension spread quickly throughout the hospital. Most of her colleagues were shocked and angry about the decision. Dr. Peterson and several other doctors wrote letters supporting Sarah, explaining that her actions had been medically necessary and heroic. But the hospital administration didn't care about medical opinions. They were only concerned about following rules and protecting their profits. Janet Morrison made sure to document every detail of Sarah's misconduct and presented a strong case against her. During the week leading up to her hearing, Sarah tried to stay positive. She visited little Emma, who was recovering beautifully from her surgery. The girl's father, whose name was Tom Bradley, thanked Sarah repeatedly and promised to testify on her behalf at the hearing. "You're a hero," Tom told Sarah. "My daughter is alive because of your courage. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." But Sarah was beginning to realize that heroism didn't always protect people from bureaucracy. The hospital's legal department was more powerful than individual gratitude or medical ethics. The hearing took place on a Friday morning in the hospital's main conference room. Sarah sat at a long table facing 5 board members, including Mr. Williams and Janet Morrison. Tom Bradley was there to support her, along with Dr. Peterson and several other colleagues. Janet Morrison presented her case first. She explained in detail how Sarah had violated multiple hospital policies by treating a patient without proper documentation. She argued that such behavior could expose the hospital to lawsuits and financial losses. "If we allow this kind of reckless behavior," Janet concluded, "we'll set a dangerous precedent. Every nurse will think they can ignore our procedures whenever they feel like it. The hospital could face millions of dollars in unpaid medical bills." Then, it was Sarah's turn to defend herself. She spoke passionately about her duty as a nurse to save lives. She explained how the little girl had been dying and how waiting for paperwork would have been a death sentence. Dr. Peterson testified about the medical necessity of Sarah's actions. Tom Bradley spoke emotionally about how Sarah had saved his daughter's life. Several nurses testified about Sarah's excellent record and dedication to patient care. But the board members seemed unmoved by these testimonies. They appeared more concerned about legal liability and financial risks than about saving children's lives. After 2 hours of testimony, the board members left to deliberate. Sarah waited nervously with her supporters, hoping that common sense and compassion would prevail. 30 minutes later, the board returned with their decision. Mr. Williams cleared his throat and read from a prepared statement. After careful consideration of all testimony and evidence, the board has decided that Nurse Sarah Mitchell violated fundamental hospital policies that are essential for our institution's financial security and legal protection. Therefore, we have no choice but to terminate her employment, effective immediately. Sarah felt like the world had collapsed around her. 8 years of dedicated service and spotless record, and a life-saving heroic action meant nothing to these people. They had chosen money over morality, bureaucracy over bravery. This decision is final and non-appealable, Mr. Williams continued. Nurse Mitchell must clear out her locker and leave the premises within 1 hour. Security will escort her out to ensure hospital property is protected. Tom Bradley jumped to his feet angrily. "This is insane," he shouted. "She saved my daughter's life. How can you fire someone for being a hero?" "Sir, please calm down or we'll have to call security," Janet Morrison replied coldly. Dr. Peterson shook his head in disgust. "This hospital has lost its soul," he muttered. "We're supposed to be healers, not accountants." Sarah stood up slowly, feeling numb with shock and disappointment. She had always been proud to work at St. Mary's, but now she felt ashamed to have been associated with such a heartless institution. As she cleaned out her locker, surrounded by sympathetic colleagues who were afraid to speak too loudly in her support, Sarah wondered what she would do next. Nursing was her life, but would any other hospital want to hire someone who had been fired for violating policies? The security guard who escorted her out was embarrassed by his assignment. "I'm really sorry about this, Sarah," he whispered. "Everyone knows what you did was right." Sarah nodded sadly and walked out of St. Mary's Hospital for the last time as an employee. She had entered that building 8 years ago as an eager young nurse ready to change the world. Now she was leaving as a woman whose career had been destroyed for doing exactly what she had always dreamed of doing, saving a child's life. Little did Sarah know that her story was far from over. In fact, the most important chapter of her life was about to begin, thanks to a man she had never met who would soon learn about her remarkable courage and the injustice she had suffered. But, for now, she could only feel the pain of being punished for following her heart and doing what was right. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah was fired from St. Mary's Hospital. She spent most of her days sitting in her small apartment, staring at the stack of bills on her kitchen table. The reality of unemployment was hitting her hard, and she was beginning to understand just how much her life had changed. Every morning, Sarah would wake up and automatically prepare to go to work, only to remember that she no longer had a job to go to. The silence in her apartment was deafening compared to the busy, life-filled environment of the hospital she had grown to love. Her savings were running out quickly. Rent was due in 1 week, and she barely had enough money left to pay it. Her health insurance had been cancelled when she was fired, which meant she couldn't afford to get sick. The irony wasn't lost on her that someone who had dedicated her life to healthcare now couldn't afford medical care for herself. Sarah had been applying for nursing jobs at every hospital within 50 miles of her home. At first, she had been optimistic. She had 8 years of excellent experience, glowing recommendations from doctors and colleagues, and a proven track record of exceptional patient care. But her optimism quickly faded when she realized that the story of her firing had spread throughout the medical community. Hospital administrators talked to each other, and word had gotten out that Sarah Mitchell was a troublemaker who didn't follow rules. Every interview followed the same pattern. The nursing supervisors would be impressed with her credentials and experience until they asked about her reason for leaving St. Mary's. When Sarah explained what had happened, their enthusiasm would immediately cool. We understand your motivation, they would say diplomatically, but we need nurses who work within our established procedures. We can't have staff members making independent decisions about when to follow policies. Some were more direct. If we hired you, how would we know you wouldn't ignore our rules too? One hospital administrator asked bluntly. We need team players, not mavericks. Sarah tried to explain that she had only broken the rules to save a dying child, but it didn't matter. Hospital administrators saw her as a liability, someone who might cause problems or expose them to lawsuits. After the 15th rejection, Sarah began to lose hope. She started looking at jobs outside of nursing, even though the thought of leaving her profession broke her heart. She applied to work at grocery stores, restaurants, and office buildings. At least those jobs would help her pay rent while she figured out what to do with the rest of her life. During this difficult time, Tom Bradley and his daughter Emma became Sarah's only source of comfort. They visited her regularly, bringing groceries and emotional support. Tom was still furious about Sarah's firing and was trying to find ways to help her. This isn't fair, Tom would say every time he visited. You saved Emma's life, and they treated you like a criminal. There has to be something we can do. Little Emma, who was now completely recovered from her accident, had grown very attached to Sarah. She would draw pictures for her and always asked when Sarah would be working at the hospital again. Sarah never had the heart to tell the 7-year-old that she might never work as a nurse again. Miss Sarah, when I grow up, I want to be a nurse just like you, Emma said during one of their visits. You're the nicest person in the whole world. These innocent words brought tears to Sarah's eyes. How could she explain to the sweet child that being nice and saving lives wasn't enough in the real world? How could she tell Emma that sometimes doing the right thing led to punishment instead of reward? Tom had been researching Sarah's legal options, hoping to find a way to fight back against her unfair treatment. He consulted with several employment lawyers, but they all gave him the same disappointing news. Hospital employment is complicated, one lawyer explained. Most nurses are at-will employees, which means they can be fired for almost any reason. Since the hospital has documented policy violations, they have legal grounds for termination. A lawsuit would be expensive and difficult to win. Another lawyer was more direct. Morally, she did the right thing. Legally, she broke workplace rules. Unless we can prove discrimination or illegal retaliation, there's not much we can do. Tom refused to give up. He started a social media campaign to raise awareness about Sarah's situation. He created posts explaining how Sarah had saved Emma's life and was fired for it. He shared photos of Emma's recovery and testimonials from other parents whose children Sarah had helped over the years. The story began to gain attention online. Local news outlets picked it up, and soon Sarah was being interviewed by television reporters. The public response was overwhelmingly supportive. People were outraged that a hospital would fire someone for saving a child's life. This nurse is a hero, one viewer commented on a news story. The hospital should be ashamed of themselves. If this happened to my child, I would want Nurse Sarah taking care of them, wrote another person. She did exactly what any good nurse should do. But, despite the public support, Sarah still couldn't find a job. Hospital administrators didn't care about public opinion or social media campaigns. They cared about protecting their institutions from liability and maintaining control over their employees. The media attention did bring some unexpected opportunities. A few private medical practices reached out to Sarah, offering her positions as a nurse practitioner or medical assistant. However, these jobs paid much less than hospital nursing and didn't offer the same benefits or career advancement opportunities. Sarah seriously considered these offers, even though they would mean starting over in her career. She was running out of money and options. Pride couldn't pay her rent or put food on her table. During this lowest point in her life, Sarah began to question everything she believed about healthcare and helping others. She had always thought that dedication and compassion would be enough to build a successful nursing career. Now she realized that the medical industry was often more concerned with profit than patients. Late at night, Sarah would lie awake wondering if she had made the right choice that rainy Tuesday evening. Maybe she should have followed the rules and let the bureaucrats handle the situation. Maybe the little girl would have survived anyway, and Sarah would still have her job and her career. But every time these doubts crept into her mind, she would remember Emma's pale, unconscious face and her father's desperate pleas for help. She knew in her heart that she had done the right thing, even if it had cost her everything. One particularly difficult morning, Sarah received an eviction notice from her landlord. She had managed to pay rent for 2 months by using her savings and borrowing money from her parents, but she couldn't keep up with the payments. She had 2 weeks to find the money or lose her apartment. Sarah sat on her couch, holding the eviction notice, and, finally, allowed herself to cry. She had tried to stay strong throughout this ordeal, but the stress and uncertainty were becoming overwhelming. For the first time since becoming a nurse, she felt completely helpless. Her phone rang while she was crying. It was Dr. Peterson from St. Mary's Hospital. Sarah almost didn't answer, afraid it might be more bad news, but she eventually picked up. "Sarah, I have something important to tell you," Dr. Peterson said. "There's been a development in your situation. Are you free to meet for coffee this afternoon?" "What kind of development?" Sarah asked suspiciously. She had learned not to get her hopes up about anything. "I can't explain over the phone," Dr. Peterson replied. "But, trust me, this is something you need to hear. Can you meet me at the coffee shop across from the hospital at 3 o'clock? Sarah agreed, though she couldn't imagine what Dr. Peterson might have to tell her. Maybe another hospital was interested in hiring her, or perhaps there was news about a legal challenge to her firing. She spent the rest of the morning trying not to speculate about what Dr. Peterson wanted to discuss. She had been disappointed so many times over the past few weeks that she didn't want to build up false hope again. At exactly 3 o'clock, Sarah walked into the coffee shop and found Dr. Peterson sitting at a corner table. He looked excited about something, which was unusual for the normally serious neurologist. "Sarah, thank you for coming," he said as she sat down. "I have some news that might change everything for you." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked carefully. Dr. Peterson leaned forward and lowered his voice. "Yesterday, a man came to the hospital asking about you. He said he had heard about your situation and wanted to learn more about what happened that night with the little girl." "Who was he?" Sarah asked. "His name is Marcus Thompson," Dr. Peterson replied. "He's a businessman from the city. Apparently, he read about your story online and was very interested in meeting you." Sarah frowned. "I don't understand. Why would a businessman be interested in my situation?" Dr. Peterson smiled mysteriously. "That's what you'll have to ask him yourself. He left his contact information and said he hopes you'll call him." "Sarah, I think this could be exactly the opportunity you've been waiting for." Sarah took the business card Dr. Peterson handed her. It was elegant and expensive looking, with simple black lettering on thick white cardstock. Marcus Thompson, CEO, Thompson Medical Group, it read, followed by a phone number. "I've never heard of Thompson Medical Group," Sarah said. "Neither had I," Dr. Peterson admitted. "But I did some research after he left. Sarah, this man owns a chain of private hospitals and medical centers throughout the state. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and he's known for his innovative approach to healthcare." Sarah stared at the business card, afraid to let herself hope. "Why would someone like that be interested in me?" "Only one way to find out," Dr. Peterson said. "Call him." That evening, Sarah sat in her apartment, staring at Marcus Thompson's business card. She had been holding it for hours, afraid to make the phone call. What if this was just another dead end? What if he wanted to offer her some low-paying job out of pity? But she had nothing left to lose. Her eviction notice was sitting on the table, her savings account was empty, and her career in nursing seemed to be over. At worst, this phone call would lead nowhere. At best, it might offer her a chance to rebuild her life. Sarah took a deep breath and dialed the number. The phone rang only twice before a deep, professional voice answered. "Marcus Thompson speaking." Sarah's heart started beating faster. She had expected to reach a secretary or assistant, not the man himself. "Mr. Thompson, this is Sarah Mitchell. Dr. Peterson said you wanted to speak with me." "Sarah. Thank you so much for calling," Marcus said warmly. "I've been hoping to hear from you. I've read about your situation, and I'd very much like to meet you in person. Would you be available for lunch tomorrow?" Yes, I suppose I could meet you," Sarah replied, still confused about why this successful businessman wanted to see her. "Excellent. How about we meet at the Garden Restaurant on 5th Street at noon? It's a quiet place where we can talk comfortably." After hanging up, Sarah spent the evening trying to figure out what to wear to meet a billionaire. Her professional clothes were limited since she had been living on unemployment benefits, but she managed to put together a decent outfit. She arrived at the Garden Restaurant 15 minutes early, nervous about what this meeting might bring. The restaurant was elegant and expensive, definitely not the kind of place Sarah had been eating at lately. She felt out of place among the well-dressed business people enjoying their expensive lunches. At exactly noon, a tall man in his early 40s walked into the restaurant. He was handsome in a distinguished way, with dark hair that was slightly gray at the temples and kind eyes behind designer glasses. He was wearing an expensive suit, but his manner seemed relaxed and approachable. "Sarah Mitchell?" he asked, approaching her table with a smile. "Yes, that's me," Sarah replied, standing to shake his hand. "I'm Marcus Thompson. It's a real pleasure to meet you." He sat down across from her and immediately made her feel more comfortable. "Thank you for agreeing to see me on such short notice." "Mr. Thompson, I have to admit I'm confused about why you wanted to meet me," Sarah said honestly. Marcus smiled. "Please, call me Marcus. And I promise everything will make sense soon. First, let me ask you about that night at the hospital. Tell me exactly what happened." Sarah told him the whole story, from the moment Tom Bradley carried his unconscious daughter into the emergency room to the moment she was escorted out of the hospital by security. Marcus listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine interest in every detail. "You knew you would be fired if you treated that child without proper documentation," Marcus observed. "Yet you did it anyway." "That little girl was dying," Sarah replied simply. "I couldn't just stand there and watch her die because of paperwork." "It wasn't even a difficult decision." Marcus nodded slowly. "Most people would have followed the rules to protect their jobs." "What made you different?" Sarah thought about this question carefully. "I became a nurse to save lives, not to protect hospital profits. If I can't do that, then there's no point in being a nurse at all." "Even knowing it would cost you your career?" "Even knowing that," Sarah confirmed. "Some things are more important than careers." Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying Sarah's face. Then, he said something that completely surprised her. "My daughter Sophia is 7 years old, the same age as Emma Bradley." Sarah blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry, I don't understand the connection." 2 years ago, Sophia was in a terrible car accident," Marcus continued. "She was rushed to the emergency room with internal injuries and bleeding. The doctors said she needed immediate surgery to save her life." Sarah listened intently, wondering where this story was going. "But there was a problem with our insurance verification," Marcus continued. "Even though I'm wealthy enough to pay for any medical treatment, the hospital's computer system was down that night. They couldn't process our insurance information." Sarah felt a chill as she began to understand what Marcus was telling her. "The hospital administrator insisted we had to wait for the system to come back online before they could operate on Sophia. She was bleeding internally, and they wanted to wait for computer verification." Marcus's voice became tighter with emotion. "I offered to pay cash, to write a check for any amount, but they said it was against policy." "What happened?" Sarah asked softly. "A nurse named Jennifer Adams decided that policy wasn't as important as my daughter's life. She took Sophia into surgery without authorization, just like you did with Emma Bradley." Marcus paused, his eyes becoming misty. "That nurse saved Sophia's life, and she was fired the next day for violating hospital procedures." Sarah felt her heart sink. So you know exactly how unfair this system can be. I know more than that, Marcus replied. I know what it's like to watch someone sacrifice their career to save your child. And I know what it's like to feel helpless when the system punishes heroes for doing what's right. Marcus reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. After Sophia recovered, I promised myself that I would never let what happened to Jennifer Adams happen to another nurse. I started Thompson Medical Group specifically to create hospitals where patient care comes before bureaucratic procedures. He opened the folder and slid several documents across the table to Sarah. These are our core policies at all Thompson medical facilities. Patient care always comes first. No one is ever denied emergency treatment for insurance or documentation reasons. And any healthcare worker who saves a life will be rewarded, not punished. Sarah looked through the documents, amazed by what she was reading. These policies were everything she had always believed healthcare should be. I currently operate 12 hospitals and medical centers throughout the state, Marcus continued. Each one is profitable, successful, and focused on patient care rather than paperwork. It is possible to run a medical facility that puts people before profit. This sounds too good to be true, Sarah said cautiously. What does this have to do with me? Marcus smiled. I want to offer you a position, Sarah. But not just any position. I want you to help me design and implement a new pediatric wing at my newest hospital. You would be the head pediatric nurse, responsible for creating policies and training programs that reflect our values. Sarah stared at him in shock. You're offering me a job? After everything that's happened? I'm offering you a chance to build the kind of pediatric department you've always dreamed of, Marcus replied. A place where nurses are encouraged to use their judgment and prioritize patient care. A place where doing the right thing is rewarded, not punished. But, you don't even know me, Sarah protested. How can you offer me such an important position based on one conversation? Marcus leaned back in his chair. Sarah, I've spent the last week researching your background. I've talked to Dr. Peterson, several of your former colleagues, and dozens of parents whose children you've cared for over the years. Everyone says the same thing, you're an exceptional nurse who genuinely cares about her patients. He pulled out another document. I also spoke with Tom Bradley for 2 hours yesterday. He told me about how you stayed by Emma's side throughout her surgery, how you visited her during her recovery, and how you've become like family to them. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Sarah felt overwhelmed by this sudden turn of events. 3 weeks ago, she had been fired and labeled as a troublemaker. Now a billionaire was offering her a dream job. The salary would be twice what you were making at St. Mary's, Marcus continued. Full benefits, including the best health insurance available. 4 weeks of vacation per year, and a housing allowance to help you relocate if necessary. Relocate? Sarah asked. The new hospital is being built about an hour from here, Marcus explained. It's going to be the flagship facility for our pediatric program. State-of-the-art equipment, unlimited resources for patient care, and a staff of the most dedicated healthcare professionals I can find. Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. Marcus, I don't know what to say. This seems like a miracle. It's not a miracle, Marcus replied gently. It's just what happens when good people stick together and refuse to let bureaucracy win. Jennifer Adams now runs the pediatric department at my main hospital. She's helped me recruit dozens of other nurses who believe in putting patients first. He handed her a business plan. This shows our projections for the new facility. We're planning to open in 6 months, which means we need to start building our team immediately. I'd like you to be one of the first people we hire. Sarah looked through the business plan, amazed by the scope and vision of the project. This wasn't just a hospital, it was a comprehensive medical campus designed specifically for children and families. There's something else, Marcus said quietly. I want to be completely honest with you about my motivations. Yes, I believe you're an excellent nurse who deserves this opportunity. But, I also have a personal interest in making sure our pediatric department is absolutely perfect. What do you mean? Sarah asked. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then continued. Sophia, my daughter, has some ongoing health issues related to her accident. She requires regular medical monitoring and occasional treatments. I want her to receive care at a hospital where I know the staff truly cares about their patients as people, not just medical cases. Sarah understood immediately. You want to know that if Sophia needs emergency care, she'll be treated by someone like me, not someone who puts paperwork first. Exactly, Marcus confirmed. I can't bear the thought of her facing another situation where bureaucracy might delay her treatment. Having you on our team would give me tremendous peace of mind. Sarah felt honored by his trust, but also concerned about the responsibility. What if I make mistakes? What if I'm not as good as you think I am? Sarah, you've already proven who you are, Marcus replied. You risked everything to save a child you had never met before. If you're willing to do that for a stranger, I know you'll do everything possible to help any child who needs care. They spent the next hour discussing the details of the position and the plans for the new hospital. Marcus answered all of Sarah's questions and addressed her concerns about moving to a new city and starting over. I don't need an answer today, Marcus said as they prepared to leave the restaurant. Take some time to think about it. Discuss it with your family and friends. But I hope you'll say yes. I think we could do something really special together. As they walked outside, Marcus turned to Sarah one more time. There's something else I want you to know. Every employee at Thompson Medical Group signs an oath when they're hired. It's not a legal document, just a promise we make to ourselves and our patients. He recited the oath from memory. I promise to put patient care above all other considerations. I promise to use my skills and judgment to help anyone who needs medical assistance. I promise never to let bureaucracy, profit, or fear prevent me from doing what's right. Sarah felt goosebumps as she listened to these words. This was exactly what she had always believed healthcare should be about. If you join our team, you'll take that oath too, Marcus said. And, unlike at other hospitals, living up to that oath will be rewarded, not punished. That evening, Sarah sat in her apartment, staring at the job offer documents Marcus had given her. The salary was more money than she had ever dreamed of making. The benefits were incredible. The opportunity to design a pediatric department from scratch was every nurse's dream. But, more than all of that, Sarah was excited about the possibility of working somewhere that shared her values. She wouldn't have to choose between doing what was right and keeping her job. She wouldn't have to watch children suffer because of insurance problems or administrative delays. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Tom Bradley. Sarah, I heard you met with Marcus Thompson today, Tom said excitedly. Dr. Peterson told me about the job offer. This is amazing news. It does sound too good to be true, Sarah admitted. I'm afraid to get my hopes up again. Sarah, this man saved his daughter's life because a nurse like you was willing to break the rules, Tom replied. He understands exactly what you went through and why what you did was heroic. This isn't charity or pity. This is someone who recognizes your value and wants to make sure other families get the same kind of care Emma received. As she went to bed that night, Sarah felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. She still had many questions and concerns, but she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, there were still places in the healthcare world where compassion mattered more than policy. Sarah called Marcus Thompson the next morning and accepted his job offer. Within a week, she had signed her contract, found an apartment near the new hospital site, and begun planning for the biggest career opportunity of her life. The transition happened faster than she had imagined possible. Marcus arranged for a moving company to pack up her belongings, and, within 2 weeks, Sarah was living in a beautiful apartment complex specifically designed for hospital staff. Her new home was larger and nicer than anywhere she had ever lived before. But the best part wasn't the luxury apartment or the generous salary. It was walking into Thompson Medical Center every morning and feeling genuinely excited about going to work. The new pediatric wing was still under construction, but Marcus had set up temporary offices where Sarah could begin developing policies and procedures. She worked closely with a team of architects, interior designers, and medical equipment specialists to create the perfect environment for children and their families. "I want every detail to reflect our commitment to patient care," Sarah explained during one planning meeting. "The room should feel warm and welcoming, not sterile and frightening. The nurse's station should be positioned so we can easily see and respond to every patient. And we need plenty of space for families to stay with their children." Marcus attended many of these planning sessions, offering input and support while allowing Sarah to make the important decisions about how the department would operate. "This is your vision, Sarah," he would say whenever she asked for his opinion. "You're the expert on what children and families need. I trust your judgment completely." 3 months into her new job, Sarah received a surprise phone call from Dr. Peterson at St. Mary's Hospital. "Sarah, I have some news you'll find interesting," Dr. Peterson said. "Janet Morrison was fired yesterday." Sarah was shocked. Janet had seemed untouchable at St. Mary's, protected by her strict adherence to hospital policies. "What happened?" Sarah asked. It turns out she had been denying treatment to several patients over the past year, including an elderly man who died while waiting for insurance verification, Dr. Peterson explained. His family sued the hospital, and, during the investigation, they discovered a pattern of Janet prioritizing paperwork over patient care. Dr. Peterson continued, "The hospital's board realized that Janet's rigid interpretation of policies was actually creating legal liability, not preventing it. They decided she was a greater risk than benefit." "I'm sorry to hear that," Sarah said, and she meant it. She didn't feel happy about anyone losing their job, even someone who had treated her unfairly. "There's more," Dr. Peterson added. "The hospital board offered to rehire you. They said they made a mistake and would welcome you back with a promotion and salary increase." Sarah was quiet for a moment, processing this unexpected development. "What did you tell them?" Dr. Peterson asked. "I haven't told them anything yet," Sarah replied. "I wanted to talk to you first and see if you'd be interested in coming back." Sarah thought about the offer for exactly 3 seconds before responding. "Dr. Peterson, I appreciate them recognizing their mistake, but I'm not interested in going back. I've found something much better here." "I figured that would be your answer," Dr. Peterson said with a chuckle. "From what I hear, you're building something pretty special at Thompson Medical." 4 months after starting her new job, Sarah was invited to present her pediatric care philosophy at a national nursing conference. Her presentation, titled Patient Care First, Creating a Culture Where Compassion Drives Policy, was attended by hundreds of healthcare professionals. "Too many hospitals have forgotten their primary mission," Sarah told the audience. "We exist to heal people, not to protect institutional interests. When we put bureaucracy before patient care, we fail everyone we're supposed to serve." She told the story of Emma Bradley and explained how that experience had led to her current position. The audience was riveted by her presentation, and many nurses approached her afterward to ask about job opportunities at Thompson Medical. "We're always looking for nurses who share our values," Sarah told them. "If you believe that patient care should come first, we'd love to talk with you." 6 months after accepting Marcus's job offer, the new pediatric wing was ready to open. Sarah had recruited a team of 12 nurses, all of whom had been chosen for their dedication to patient care rather than their willingness to follow rules blindly. The night before the official opening, Sarah walked through the completed pediatric department with Marcus and his daughter Sophia. The little girl had grown close to Sarah over the past months, and Sarah had become something like a big sister to her. "Miss Sarah, this is the most beautiful hospital I've ever seen," Sophia said, running her hands along the colorful murals that decorated the hallways. "Do you think sick children will feel better when they see these pictures?" Sarah asked. "Oh yes," Sophia replied seriously. "When I was hurt, everything was white and scary. But this looks like a place where kids can get better and be happy." Marcus smiled as he watched his daughter interact with Sarah. "You know, Sophia has been through dozens of medical appointments over the past 2 years. She's never been as comfortable with any healthcare provider as she is with you." Sarah knelt down to Sophia's eye level. "That's because I believe every child deserves to feel safe and cared for when they're sick or hurt. That's what we're going to do here every single day. The pediatric wing officially opened the following Monday. Their first patient was a 6-year-old boy named Michael who had broken his arm falling off his bike. His parents were nervous about bringing him to a brand new hospital, but their anxiety disappeared as soon as they met Sarah and her team. "We're going to take excellent care of Michael," Sarah assured his parents. "And you're welcome to stay with him throughout his entire treatment." The boy's father was amazed. "At the other hospital we went to, they said parents weren't allowed in the treatment rooms." "That's not how we do things here," Sarah replied. "Children heal faster when their families are close by." Within 3 hours, Michael's arm was x-rayed, set in a cast, and he was ready to go home with detailed care instructions and a follow-up appointment already scheduled. "This was the best hospital experience we've ever had," Michael's mother told Sarah. "Everyone was so kind and professional. It's obvious that you all really care about your patients." Word about the exceptional care at Thompson Medical's pediatric wing spread quickly throughout the community. Within a month, they were treating children from all over the region, including many families who drove hours to receive care there. Sarah's favorite part of her new job was the daily staff meetings where the team would discuss each patient's progress and plan their care. Unlike at St. Mary's, where meetings focused on paperwork and procedures, these discussions centered entirely on what was best for each child. "Emma Rodriguez has been afraid of needles since her last surgery," one nurse would report. "I think we should use a numbing cream and let her hold her stuffed animal during blood draws." "Tommy Chen's parents are having trouble understanding his medication schedule," another nurse might add. "I'd like to create a visual chart they can follow at home." Sarah encouraged this kind of individualized, compassionate approach to patient care. Every suggestion was welcomed, and every idea for improving patient experience was implemented if possible. 1 year after the pediatric wing opened, Sarah received a letter that brought tears to her eyes. It was from Tom Bradley, written on behalf of his daughter Emma. "Dear Miss Sarah," the letter read in a child's careful handwriting. "I am 8 years old now and I am healthy and strong. My daddy told me that you lost your job for helping me when I was hurt. I am very sorry that happened to you, but I am also very proud that you were brave enough to help me. My daddy also told me that you now help lots of other children at your new hospital. I think that is wonderful because you are the best nurse in the whole world. I hope someday I can visit your new hospital and see all the good work you are doing. Maybe when I grow up, I can be a nurse like you and help children too. Thank you for saving my life and for showing me what it means to be kind and brave. Love, Emma Bradley." Sarah read the letter 3 times, remembering that terrifying night when she had made the decision that changed everything. Looking back, she realized that losing her job at St. Mary's had been the best thing that ever happened to her professional life. 2 years after joining Thompson Medical, Sarah was promoted to Chief of Pediatric Services, overseeing pediatric departments at all 12 Thompson Medical facilities. She spent her time traveling between hospitals, training staff, developing new programs, and ensuring that every child received the same high level of compassionate care. Marcus had become not just her boss, but one of her closest friends. They worked together to expand the pediatric program and develop new policies that other hospitals began adopting. "You know, Sarah, when I started this company, I thought I was just trying to honor the nurse who saved Sophia's life," Marcus told her during one of their planning meetings. "I never imagined we'd end up changing how pediatric care is delivered across the entire region." "It's amazing what happens when you put patient care first," Sarah replied. "When healthcare workers are empowered to use their judgment and compassion, everyone benefits." Marcus nodded. "I have a confession to make. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been fired from St. Mary's. Would we have ever met? Would any of this have been possible?" Sarah thought about this question. "I like to think that people who are meant to work together always find each other eventually. Maybe it wouldn't have happened exactly this way, but I believe we would have found each other somehow." 3 years after that life-changing night in St. Mary's emergency room, Sarah received an invitation to speak at a medical ethics conference. The topic was "When Rules and Compassion Conflict, Making Ethical Decisions in Healthcare." Sarah's speech was entitled "The Night That Changed Everything," and she told the complete story of Emma Bradley, her firing from St. Mary's, and the incredible journey that followed. I learned that doing what's right isn't always easy or safe, she told the audience of doctors, nurses, and hospital administrators. But it's always worth it. When we choose compassion over bureaucracy, when we put patient care before institutional protection, we don't just save lives, we save the soul of healthcare itself. The audience gave her a standing ovation, but, more importantly, several hospital administrators approached her afterward to discuss implementing similar patient-first policies at their own facilities. "You've started a movement," one administrator told her. "Hospitals across the country are beginning to question whether their policies serve patients or just protect institutions." 5 years after joining Thompson Medical, Sarah received the National Pediatric Nursing Excellence Award, a highest honor in her profession. The award recognized her innovative approaches to patient care and her leadership in transforming pediatric nursing practices. At the award ceremony, Marcus and Sophia were in the front row, cheering as Sarah received her recognition. Emma Bradley and her father were there too, having driven 6 hours to attend the event. During her acceptance speech, Sarah looked out at the audience and saw all the people who had supported her journey. "This award doesn't belong just to me," she said. "It belongs to every healthcare worker who has ever chosen to do what's right instead of what's safe. It belongs to every nurse who has risked their career to save a life. It belongs to everyone who believes that compassion should guide our decisions in healthcare." She paused and looked directly at Emma Bradley. "Most of all, it belongs to the children and families who trust us with their most precious moments. They remind us every day why we became healthcare providers in the first place." After the ceremony, Sarah spent time talking with young nurses who were just starting their careers. Many of them asked for advice about handling difficult ethical situations. "Remember that you became a nurse to help people," Sarah told them. "When you're faced with a choice between following rules and saving lives, trust your training, trust your compassion, and do what's right. Yes, there might be consequences, but there are also people like Marcus Thompson in this world who recognize and reward true dedication to patient care." As Sarah drove home that night, she thought about how dramatically her life had changed since that rainy Tuesday evening 5 years ago. She had lost one job but found a calling. She had been punished for doing what was right, only to be rewarded beyond her wildest dreams. Most importantly, she had learned that standing up for your principles, even when it's difficult, can lead to opportunities you never could have imagined. Sometimes losing everything is the first step toward finding everything you were meant to have. Emma Bradley was now 12 years old, healthy and strong, and already talking about becoming a pediatric nurse when she grew up. Sophia Thompson was 9 and frequently visited the pediatric wing, where she had become an unofficial ambassador for other young patients. Sarah's work had expanded beyond Thompson Medical. She consulted with hospitals nationwide, helping them develop patient-centered policies and training programs. She had written a book about compassionate healthcare that had become required reading in nursing schools across the country. But, despite all her professional success, Sarah's greatest satisfaction still came from the daily moments of caring for children and supporting their families. Every time she saw a scared child smile, every time she helped a worried parent feel more confident, every time she made a difference in someone's life, those were the moments that reminded her why she had chosen nursing in the first place. The little girl who had changed everything was now a healthy, thriving adolescent who never forgot the nurse who had risked everything to save her life. And the nurse who had lost everything for doing what was right had found a new life that was richer, more meaningful, and more fulfilling than anything she had ever dreamed possible. Sometimes, Sarah realized, the worst thing that happens to you can turn out to be the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to you. All it takes is the courage to do what's right, even when the cost seems impossibly high.